Willem Felderhof. You are in Holland. You are a Dutch citizen. You also have a YouTube channel and a website. And apart from the fact that you're doing interviews now, I'd like you to tell us what's happening in Holland, because you have an election coming up in a day or two, and there's all this crisis with Turkey. Perhaps you could summarize the mood on the street.
Well, there is some tension in the streets, of course, regarding all this. Some more confusion. That's the overall state, I think, of the society here in Holland and other societies, that they are in a state of confusion about all this, and more in a reactive mode. So people just react on what's happening instead of thinking of what's happening there, and more in concepts, a more holistic view on what's happening actually with this madness, which is just continuing and going on. And this is not a coincidence, of course, that this is happening just before the elections happening here, with the whole Wilders hype.
What I'm learning or reading is that the Wilders is leading in the polls, and also that the crisis with Turkey will feed him more support.
Yes, well, that's coincidentally exactly what it's in his favor what's happening. So that's not a coincidence, of course. But this will help him, because people, what I just said, they just react. So if they see on the streets these demonstrations happening, which are weird by itself, that this sudden rise of Turkish protests in Rotterdam, they don't question it. How is that possible? These people pro Erdogan are also demonstrating. Why are they not in Turkey? Or they don't put any relation to the election, so they just react on it. And then they will more move towards Wilders. I mean, this is the classic problem reaction solution dynamic. What you see just before the elections, they just portray this as Islamic demonstration and not Turkish. So this will again feed the fear of this Muslim hyped fear, which is engineered, of course. But since people are in this reactive mode, they will fall for this, and they will turn more to Wilders. Yeah, so that's happening.
So how would you summarize the support of Wilders, say before this current crisis in Turkey? I mean, what is the attraction? What is it? The fact that he wants to leave the EU, or it's against Muslims or against immigration? What is the strongest card he's playing?
Well, I think what you see in Europe itself, I mean, it's also happening in France, of course, with Le Pen. This fascism, this seeds of fascism, which are spreading out of Europe, and they're gaining support because the far majority of societies are in a state of fear, whether they are aware of it or not. So they will respond, they will react on what's happening on their television screen, what they see, and this fear of Islamic extremism that will feed this rise of this fascist movements in Europe. And what we see in the United States, of course, the same. It's still. I mean, these are interconnected. And well, if you go back on the roots of Geert Wilders, he's completely controlled opposition. His close ties to Israel, for instance, Zionist connections are blatantly clear, and same with Le Pen in France, and the same in the United States. And the European political arena is completely owned and controlled by Zionist neocon forces behind the what do you call it? Not visible, but they're just following orders, and they are forwarding these agendas. And Wilders is.
If we discuss the immigration issue, I mean, there is mass migration. The demographics of the countries are being disturbed, and yet it's under Zionist control. It's hard to make sense of this. The Zionists are backing both sides. Are they driving us into a crisis? They're backing the globalists, the multiculturalism, and they're backing the fascists. Where does that leave the ordinary person?
Well, yeah, I mean these immigration problems. If you see, yesterday I watched to the some of the debates. I mean, it's a complete freak show. I think it's incredible that people are still putting any hopes in politicians or in this illusion. It's completely illusion of false choices you are presented with. But they don't address the causal factors of this immigration problems. This goes way back in the beginning of the last century. This was well written down and documented. These plans, if you're aware of the Coudenhove Kalergi plan, for instance, it's well written down what they had in mind for the genocide of Europe. Actually, it's a genocide, but it's a deceptive genocide. They cannot do it with weapons or things, but by immigration. Mass immigration, they tear down the European societies, and this is engineered, clearly engineered, and not a word in the election about us, Holland, supporting the wars in the Middle East, the destruction of all these countries, the millions of deaths caused by these NATO wars of aggression and Israeli wars. Not a word about it. I mean, that's the causal factors of these people coming here, or the immigrant problem, if you want to call it like that, are not discussed at all. So they just react on it, the politicians, to say, well, we have to cope with it. But it's well written down. Even in the UN, in 2000, the document in the United Nations was written down that Europe needed 159 million immigrants. That was a goal of United Nations document even. So
fertility rate is going down. People are not having children for sociological reasons, for financial reasons. I mean, the populations are getting older in Europe. It's a very sick continent.
It is. But I think it's not only Europe. I mean, we see the same things, the same dynamics happening also in the United States or on other continents.
Certainly in the United States, yes, North America. They depend on immigration, really.
If I look around here, people as well, there is really a shutdown in consciousness. People don't think anymore. We've seen it clearly with the situation in Syria, but now again with this election madness, people just responding on what's happening on the news. And they react on that without any thinking, clear thinking.
It's hard to be objective when we're drowned with all the information. You know, I just ask you, although a question which is perhaps a little basic, but ignoring the objectivity. But you know, Holland refused 2 Turkish ministers to enter. Is this not an extremely unusual thing to do?
It is. I mean, it is. Of course, they don't do anything. The Dutch government is actually just following orders. We have to make that clear. It's not that they are a sovereign political organ. No, they're just following orders, and the orders are coming from other areas, and there are bigger agendas, of course, part of this. And that's what people need to realize. They vote on different masters, and they continue with the same agendas over and over and over again. And they still continue to pin their hopes on these politicians who actively support these agendas and supporting terrorism and all these facets which are connected with these agendas. So it's quite pathetic, really, that people still falling for this illusion of the politicians who will save them from anything.
I think what's very nice is that you're talking about Holland, and perhaps it didn't really cross my mind with the clarity, but I can relate to it. You know, in England, where I come from, I'm sure everyone can relate to what you're saying in their own country. They're all just puppets of some globalist plan, scam.
Yes, they are. And I mean, we see not really significant changes happening in the world. These agendas for a totalitarian new world order system, more centralized political system, which has total control over everything in the world, is just continuing. So if you look objectively at it, it's not. So we will continue to see this madness, false flag madness, for instance. You can bet on it that they even say it. Wilders said we're going to have terror attacks in Europe, or in Holland. He just stated that, and so this will continue. But it's important for people to just think about what's happening and just do some more investigation and look at it instead of only reacting to it and going to the slaughterhouse at the same time by voting yourself to the slaughterhouse.
I think.
But yes, I mean, Holland, it's an occupied country, like most countries in Europe, and that's difficult for people to grasp on. But yeah, if you look at what's happening in Holland around you cannot escape from that reality.
You know,
we try to escape.
You remember when the Warsaw Pact collapsed? It was like one country after another. And perhaps the same thing will happen in Western Europe. You know, just one country after another will leave the EU and NATO and perhaps.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, this dynamic goes on after the Second World War. We were liberated by United States and the Allies. Well, if you take a close look at real history, what's really happened, which were the driving forces behind these wars, and the financiers and the corporate powers which fueled this war, and other facts around it, then you can see that this is part of a bigger agenda, and it's just continuing. And all these countries are being taken with sort of stage revolutions because they want to be part of these democracies or Western Europe. But it's the same what's happening everywhere. The same dynamics you see over and over again.
Yeah.
So most blatantly, for instance, with the Ukraine, I mean, what happened there? It's the same, and so this election is also part of it. These elections, which are completely an illusion. Same with if you see in the United States. Sorry.
No, just agreeing with you. I mean, the facade of democracy it's collapsing slowly. The rot is set in. It's the beginning of the end of us believing in democracies generally. I think they've had a good run. It's just a blip in history, you know?
Yeah, it's an illusion.
It's an illusion, but more and more of us are seeing that for the first time. So that's why, you know, if we can survive, the democracies might disappear.
Yeah. But the people who see it, they don't act according that there's knowledge, they see what's happening, but they don't act. They're still supporting the system. So that's also why we don't see these significant changes, because people still continue to support the system because then they have this justification. Yeah, because I have a family to take care of, I have my mortgage, or all kinds of justification why they support this completely immoral system, and this political arena is of course part of it, but there is a deeper psychological reason underlying of this. This is sort of Stockholm syndrome of being abused by an aggressive father, which is over and over abusing, and you still keep supporting it. Well, that's the state. The state is the big daddy, of course, for people. They hope that they can vote for another master who will save them and provide them for a big future. Well, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. It's a complete false illusion. And it's incredible that people still are in this state of mind, which is quite a lower state of consciousness, really, if you want to see it. And that's where the shift needs to happen. We need to expand our consciousness and grow up.
There's one extreme party saying they don't believe in democracy in Holland now. I read that in RT. Jesus is going to save them in this case.
Somebody will save them, not themselves. There will be somebody out there, or some guru, or aliens, or interdimensional, or some politician, or whatever authority will save them. Well, that's not going to happen. And as long as we believe that, or we just use that as a reason not to act accordingly, because we're afraid to act, really, it will not change. This will continue, and it is continuing. And at the same time, it's a good thing because the system needs to come down. But that's often for most of us is don't like that. Well, we need some form of government to protect us still in this mindset.
Well,
And the state is making use of this, of course, this fear. They need that big daddy to protect them. Look at Trump. Look at he's going to save us from ISIS.
there are some alternative systems. Gaddafi's Green Book always comes to mind, but even I don't know. Democracy is like a secondary position in Iran. It's worth considering their system. I've no idea what the solution is. Listen, Wilhelm, I think what we need to make clear is your YouTube channel is called Dutch Anarchy, and it's very correct and apt and appropriate. And anarchy means cooperatively working together without a leader. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. The word derived from anarchy is from Greek no, and no rulers, archon, controllers, rulers. So no external rulers. We are our own masters. We are not slaves. We are our own masters over our own thoughts, emotions, and actions, without external interference. That's anarchy. That's order. But I mean, it's twisted, of course. But most people think it's chaos. Well, we now have chaos. And we will continue to create more chaos as long as we put our beliefs in external control. Any form of external control will lead to more chaos. It's quite simple, actually. And that's not a belief, that's a law, natural law, actually. But people need to give up certain attachments. And that comes very close to their personal lives. That's where people don't want to go. They want to have this change, this external change, but they don't, at the same time, they're supporting it, this system or the external reality, because they don't want to change within this system. They need to give up their complete fear and take complete responsibility. And that's where people are not able to go. People are completely dependent of the system and believe in money and all these religions. So it makes it very complicated, and
we've been
at the same time,
we've been conditioned over centuries. It's going to be difficult. Listen, Wilhelm, let's stop there. It's been terrific having you on. When are the results of the false, fraudulent elections coming?
I think it will. I think it will be the 15th.
Well,
that's tomorrow.
Well, I'd love to have you back. To just tell us what happened after you find out.
Yeah, that's good. Let's do that.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Wilhelm.
Okay. Take care. Thank you, Morris.
Thank you.